What's good, meaningful movers? Welcome back to Moving With Me in the podcast, where actions have meaning, words have meaning, and we open up the conversations to discover what's your next move. I'm your host, Krystal. In today's episode, I have mental health and hormones on the brain. Don't underestimate its power, but you know how we do it here. We need to set that theme, so let's go ahead and do that. The word of the day is connection. When it all comes down to it, the brain is the interchange highway of the body, allowing all movement between biological elements and neurological pathways. Shall we delve into what all of that leading intro means? Well, that's enough of me talking. How about we introduce our guest? And there's no one better to do that than himself, Dr. Bilstrom. Why don't you give the people a bit of background about yourself and what you're going to share with us today?
Well, thanks for having me, Krystal. Well, I am a former Division I tennis player, go TCU, currently and for many decades an extreme snowboarder. But I think you're having me on here because I'm also a physician, an author, and an educator who's revolutionizing the way that autoimmune disease is dealt with worldwide in adults and children. And besides being a global social media healthcare influencer, my clinical clients come from every state in the U.S. and across 21 time zones worldwide.
Okay, we got a superstar in all realms here on the line. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your time today.
I think this is going to be time well spent.
Good. I guess let's start with what you talk about brain health for children and adults. How is that challenging to stay healthy as children today?
That is the theme of today. Everything is connected. Every body part talks to the other body parts. This is where all body parts are trying to keep each other happy and healthy. When things start going haywire, everything gets involved. This is why it's so easy, whether you're a child or an adult, to just get one thing after another, and you're like, this is crazy. Why is all this happening at the same time? Well, because everything's connected, some very important central mechanisms have got thrown off. They're throwing everything off at the same time. We kind of like to joke around about the brain kind of having a bit of a superiority complex. It kind of sits up there on high and goes, body, don't drag me into your mess. The brain always gets dragged into the mess and then becomes part of this whole system that's connected. But we got to get them all kind of working together so that everybody, brain, body, everybody gets better at the same time.
Well, you know what? That's the definition of a good leader, right? The leader doesn't just sit at the top and looks at everybody else and says, that's your problem. He got to get involved.
That's right.
I like that. So what are some examples of various brain health issues you would say we're dealing with today?
Sure. So you're talking about neuroinflammation, inflammation within the nervous system. And wherever there's excessive inflammation, you got a health problem there. Now, sometimes people hear things like, oh, well, you don't have inflammation because it's not red and swollen. Or we did one of these two blood tests for inflammation, like a SED rate or a CRP. We don't see anything, so you don't have inflammation. Well, we know at the cellular level, there's inflammation. There's lack of ability to get rid of excess inflammation. And then that body part isn't very happy. And so when we're talking about neuroinflammation brain health, it goes all the way from autism spectrum disorder, developmental delays, ADD, ADHD, memory issues, concentration issues, seizures and migraines, depression, anxiety. And when you look at the children nowadays, you're like, oh my gosh, there is so much of this brain neuroinflammation stuff going on. But then you're also talking about bipolar, schizophrenia, and you're talking about Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia, Lou Gehrig's disease. There is just a host of neuroinflammation brain stuff going on in our society. And this is why all this brain stuff is part of this huge explosion in what they call the civilization diseases. All these things that are happening so much more now than they used to be, including like in the children. I grew up near Chicago. Every one of my schools was huge. My grade school was 3 stories high. There was one kid with asthma. Now, it's every other kid has got asthma or peanut allergies or gluten intolerance, as well as all these brain things, autoimmune disease, huge explosion. Our world is making it so incredibly challenging to stay healthy, including the brain is finding it very difficult to keep away the inflammation that just likes to drive the brain crazy.
I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, we're technologically advanced.
Absolutely.
But our health is declining. These aren't new ideas. These aren't new concepts that we've been working on. Like you said, it's just the way that we've started to socialize in the world today has brought it to a breaking point. We're at that tipping point. We're at the precipice where we need to really take care of ourselves. And this brought up an interesting story for me. It's just something personal. I have anxiety, and my daughter has anxiety. So my anxiety peaked much later in life.
Mm-hmm.
But with my daughter, it peaked much earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe it's because I'm an introvert. I was like less involved in the school drama, and I'm just trying to come up with stuff. And I remember my daughter would just go into these moods, and I'm like, maybe it's her period. Is this PMS? My husband's looking at me because he's like, well, I don't have that stuff, is it? And I was like, well, I don't know because I didn't go through all of this. And then my mom's like, yeah, you weren't like this. So you could see the change. I thought she had ADHD. I thought things were going on, and she would tell me that just her mind is racing. She can't capture the thoughts, and it frustrates her.
Absolutely. Super frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get into this. All right, so the role of epigenetics that play in health. What is epigenetics, and then how do we turn it on and off?
Oh, fantastic question. So we used to think our DNA, our genes that are in every cell in our body telling the cells what to do was hardwired. Whatever you got, good, bad, otherwise, from parents, grandparents. And if you look at parents and grandparents, great-grandparents, you may go, well, geez, I hope I got the good genes because there's things going on in my family history that I don't want. But what it turns out is not so much what genes we have, it's actually which ones get turned on and turned off. And so this is epigenetics, the things that influence gene expression without changing the genetic code. And so as it turns out, there's a lot of bad genes in our DNA, a lot of good genes in our DNA. What you got to do to be healthy is to turn off the bad, turn on the good. But when people start getting health issues, what's happening is they're turning on the bad, turning off the good in every cell in their body at the same time. And so this is where it's so easy to get a whole lot of things going on at multiple parts of the body and brain because they're all being told the wrong information. When they did the Human Genome Project back a while ago, 12 years, multiple big university sites where they said, we're going to map every gene in the human genome, and we're going to find the gene that causes every disease. And we're going to go and zap that gene and turn that disease off. Well, they got done with the whole thing and they go, oh, well, this is interesting. It looks like it's not what genes you have because there's not really one gene for one disease. Now, there's a couple really super rare things in this world, like 50 people in the world have it. Well, there's one gene. They can zap it. But what they said is, well, geez, it turns out it's not what genes you have. It's which ones get turned on and turned off. And so what we want to do is be able to turn off the bad, turn on the good. And if you do it the right way, you're doing it in every cell in the body. So this puts the system in a position to reset everything at the same time. This is why things tend to run from generation to generation, though, is if prior to conceiving a child, the man and the woman have some bad genes that have gotten turned on and some good genes that gotten turned off, they pass that epigenetic stuff not just to the child, but actually the previous 6 to 8 generations. And so if somebody can clean it up before they conceive a child, they're passing on cleaner genes to the next 6 to 8 generations. If you don't turn them the right way before conceiving a child, you're passing on kind of crummier gene expression to the next 6 to 8 generations. So we're all the products of the previous 6 to 8 generations. And so if there's been emotional trauma, physical trauma, adverse childhood events, all these kind of things that like to turn on the bad, turn off the good, they don't flip them the right way before conceiving a child, just keep passing it on. And this is where kind of the ball keeps rolling downhill, and that a parent may have some issues, but it's showing up in younger and younger generations. And when you're talking about brain stuff, you're talking about that whole thing where it may show up in different ways in different generations, but it's all this neuroinflammation or diseases in general. So here you are this age, and you kind of were influenced by the previous generations, but now your influence kind of added, and then here's your daughter kind of dealing with it at a younger age. Now, it doesn't mean we can't turn them around. We're trying to share that information. We can definitely turn around, but we love to teach people how to do this before even conceiving a child. Now, the other cool thing about epigenetics, if you can flip the genes the right way before age 19, you set the system, and they just don't get stuff as adults. They don't get the diabetes, the obesities, the heart attacks, the strokes, the Alzheimer's, the dementias, all that kind of stuff. It's much easier to flip those genes when you're young. Can do it at any age, of course, but if you can set it at a young enough age, they just don't get stuff. And then when they have their own children, now they're passing on cleaner genes to the next 6 to 8 generations, and they don't end up with all this brain stuff at young ages and other health issues as well.
Sweet 16, folks. More to the milestone than just turning 16 and getting a driver's license. We got to start focusing on some epigenetics optimization.
Yes.
There are some other things, I believe, that helps with brain issues that you had mentioned, like gut and hormone imbalances.
Oh, yeah, super important.
Tell me about that, right? Because this is interesting about our conversation that we had earlier. you started talking to me about menstrual issues and stuff, and I'm like, you're a dude. What do you mean? But it was making so much sense. But I was like, so how do you know about all this?
With the type of medicine I do, we're really looking at why, trying to answer the question why people get what they get. Because if you know why they get it, you're in a position to turn it around no matter what it is. So this is where you say, thought it was maybe this, I thought it was maybe that. It doesn't really matter what name you put on it. What we want to know is why. And then we could turn around no matter what the name is. When it comes to health, hormones are very important. Hormones keep away inflammation, and by keeping away inflammation, they keep away disease. In women, the hormone symphony, the balance of all the hormones is so important. It makes women's health so much more complicated than guys' health. There's hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid, insulin that controls blood sugar, but also ones that maybe some people aren't quite as familiar with, like DHEA, pregnenolone. The stress hormone cortisol is a very important one. So for women, you want this hormone symphony to be really well balanced. It's kind of like truly a symphony orchestra. For the music to sound beautiful, everybody has to be playing together. But if one section is off, it just throws the entire symphony off. And so what tends to happen in women is, oh, you got some hormone stuff. We'll look at one or two hormones. So it's like you got this big symphony, and you're looking at the woodwind section, trying to figure out what's going on with the whole symphony. Well, that's not going to be so good. You really got to take a look at the whole symphony and go, oh, okay, I see who's throwing everybody else off and that kind of stuff. In women, a really big central mechanism within this hormone symphony is the balance between estrogen and progesterone. Each one individually very important. So like estrogen, for example, estradiol, we can use as an example. It prevents heart attacks, prevents strokes. Great for your eyes, so it prevents cataracts. It prevents macular degeneration. It's great for your bones, so it keeps away osteoporosis. It keeps your gut healthy. Great for your skin, so it keeps away fine lines and wrinkles in your skin. And then progesterone, good for your eyes, your bones, your brain. It's a calming hormone, so for sleeping like a baby, you're so chill, no excessive worry, anxiety, panic attacks, anything like that. So they're both really important, but the balance is super important. What tends to happen in women, and it's a super central mechanism in everything, including the disruption of the immune system that drives not only all the autoimmune diseases, but drives cancer big time. So you get this thing called estrogen dominance. And I call it the most dangerous disease for women because it's too much estrogen compared to progesterone. It will drive so much of what women have to deal with, including things that they go, oh, that's just part of being a woman. Get over it. So all the hormonal menstrual things, bad flows, bad cramps, premenstrual syndrome, ovarian cysts, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids, endometriosis, fibrocystic breast disease, infertility, all the hormonal menstrual things. You got any one of those or multiple ones, and unfortunately, so many women have multiple and they're bad. You cannot hardly function if you have such bad cramps or heavy flows every 30 days. That's all estrogen dominance. Because estrogen revs and progesterone calms, you get rev without calm. Excessive worry and anxiety, insomnia, panic attacks, all those kind of things. And when you look at those rev without calm things or the hormonal menstrual things, you're like, oh my gosh, it is so hard to stay healthy nowadays. What woman doesn't have those things? It used to be relatively rare.
Yeah.
That I see in their 80s and 90s. I talk to them about the menstrual cycles and they're like, oh, well, they're regular, no bad flows, no bad cramps. Started when I was 14, stopped when I was 50, no menopausal stuff. But nowadays it's like, oh my gosh, nobody almost has that story. Now, what we're trying to educate people is, well, this is what it is. We can fix it. If we don't fix it, it really throws off the immune system. And the immune system is a super important example of how the body loves balance. You don't want to be too high or too low in anything. There's always a sweet spot in the middle, like blood pressure or blood sugar. Don't want to be too high, don't want to be too low. But with the immune system, when you lose that set point right in the middle of the immune system, not too high, not too low, you actually move away from it both up and down at the same time. So the overactive immune system issues are all the autoimmune diseases. Rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's. But we now know that autoimmune stuff is part of heart attacks, strokes, osteoporosis, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all this kind of stuff. Now, also up on top is allergies and asthma and eczema. So if you see any of these guys, including in children, allergies, asthma, or eczema, you know they've lost the immune system set point. Now, on the underactive side of the immune system dysregulation, colds, flus, recurrent infections, recurrent ear infections, strep throats, sinus infections. See that a lot in children, right?
Yeah.
Infections that drive chronic disease. So the bad bugs that give us the obvious infections like high fevers and ear pain, whatever, different kind of bugs drive chronic disease. They drive that inflammation. So we now know that all chronic health issues, doesn't matter, brain otherwise, there's an infection. Some like to go to the brain, some like to go to the joints. So whenever we see the up stuff or any of the down stuff, we go, oh, you lost your set point. Let's bring it back to the middle. So estrogen dominance is a huge driver in women of this disruption of the immune system. And this is why women get 80% of all autoimmune disease. And this estrogen dominance is a huge driver of cancer risk. So what we're trying to tell people is we got this hormonal menstrual stuff, rev without calm stuff. Let's get it to go away. And if we can do that, we keep your immune system in balance. You never get the autoimmune, don't get cancer. So women with estrogen dominance before menopause have a 5.4 times greater risk of getting breast cancer before menopause. It doesn't just double the risk of breast cancer, or triple, 5.4 times greater risk. And a 10 times greater risk of getting malignant cancers, the kind that start one place and metastasize other places, kind of the bad dudes, 10 times greater risk your entire life. Wow, this estrogen dominance is the most dangerous disease for women. Vitamin D is a very important thing required to keep the immune system in balance. When you do a blood test for vitamin D, you want levels between 70 and 90. We want a woman to be 70 to 90 on a blood test for vitamin D. If a woman just gets her vitamin D above 60, not even perfect, just above 60, she has automatically decreased her risk of ever getting breast cancer by 82%. In more traditional allopathic medicine, if somebody says, well, how can I prevent this stuff? Because I see other people getting the stuff that I don't want, it's been in my family, and they're told something incredibly vague while at the same time being incredibly complicated. It sounds like, well, change how you're eating and exercise. Okay, so what kind of exercise? How do I change my diet? And we go like, no. We know too much about how to prevent stuff. Well, let's just get your vitamin D above 60, and we've automatically decreased your risk of breast cancer by 82%. Well, that was a piece of cake, right? The way that they typically get treated, either you take care of the symptom, but you miss fixing your opportunity to fix the problem, or actually when it comes to the hormonal menstrual stuff, the usual interventions that women are offered actually will make it worse. And that's birth control pills.
Oh, yeah. I was just about to say, you make a really good point. Anything with hormones getting injected into me doesn't work. Like, my body rejects it. That was something that they would do with my mom to balance some hormones or something like that. That's what they would just say, like, oh, it'll help you with your cramp, or it'll help with this, or it'll help with something like that.
Yes.
Like you said, you're right. It's probably treating the symptom, but it's missing the opportunity to treat the problem. To address this part with the birth control, because I think that's important. Growing up, when I would have like really bad cramps, my mom would always say this, and I remember teasing you because I thought this was a joke, and you were like, no, that's true. But I was like, yeah, when I was growing up, I would have these cramps, and I would tell my mom, oh, my cramps are so bad, they hurt. And she's like, yeah, because you're drinking a lot of sugar, you're eating a lot of sugar. Stop eating all that bread. Stop doing this. And I'm like, what? And then I was like, yeah, and you're telling me about this hormone. You're like, no, that's right. And I was like, really? You were like, yeah, well, these are practices that were passed down from my mother, from her mother, because that's how they lived. They lived off the land. They lived very natural lives, even as much as, like you said, at that time that it was very chaotic for them and very traumatic for them. They were still living off the land. They had a different type of nutrition than we did today. So you're right that we didn't experience as much of that as we do today because our diet has changed. But yes, back to, why did folks think treating women with birth control was to help with hormonal imbalance was the answer?
Yeah, so maybe I should kind of preface, it's not wrong to use a medicine if you need that medicine to get through your day. If your cramps are so bad, your flows are so bad, you can't get through your day, well, you got to do what you got to do. Just like you're so anxious, you got panic attacks, you can't sleep, you got to get through your day, right? But ideally, those kind of medicines that kind of put a bandage on a couple symptoms, now you buy time to go back and figure out what's really going on and fix what's going on. Then you get rid of it, and then you don't even need the medicines. So typically with birth control pills, oral birth control pills, are estrogen-based. One of the reasons they're so bad is you got this estrogen dominance, way too much estrogen compared to progesterone, and now you're adding more estrogen on top. Now you made this estrogen dominance worse. Oral estrogen pills, birth control pills, put you into menopause. And so menopause is fine at a certain age, but it's not so great when you're a teenage girl,
No.
a young woman to be in menopause. That's not what your body wants, right? When you're in menopause, you don't have menstrual cramps. You don't have PMS because you don't have your cycles anymore, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Give me a second for a second.
Oh, I know this is a big one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
great story.
I remember being in college, other ladies that I was in school with, how they were just be like, I missed my period. And I'm like, girl, are you pregnant? They're like, no, this happens. Like, I'll skip it. I'm like, I don't think that's normal. And they're like, yeah,
Right.
this normally happens. It's fine. I'm on the pill, whatever. And then there was this other couple that I know that was trying to conceive, and they went to the OBGYN, and she was asking her, how are your periods? Are they regular or whatever? And she was like, no, not really. And the doctor was looking at her kind of a little wide-eyed a little bit, and she was like, what, that's not normal? And she's like, no. Like, not at your age. You're supposed to have a period. Like, no. I just didn't realize this. It's just connecting. Wow. I didn't know that was doing that.
And when you're on oral birth control pills, you start missing cycles. You can go months or years without a cycle, and that's not normal.
Oh my God. Okay. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's good. That's good. Now, oral birth control pills are not bioidentical. They're not like a woman's hormones. They're sort of kind of, but they're not bioidentical, and thus they have an estrogen effect, but they create so much inflammation in the body. And you really never should do an oral estrogen, whether it's non-bioidentical or, unfortunately, like prescription estrogen called Premarin that was used for many years in women to deal with these hormonal things. So Premarin, the word comes from pregnant mare's urine. Pregnant female horse's urine has, depending on which horse, between 75 and 95 different estrogens, and only 2 are like human estrogens.
Oh my God.
All these non-human estrogens are creating so much inflammation. But even nowadays, every once in a while, women are given oral estradiol, which is bioidentical. It's just like a hormone a woman and a man have. But you should never take an oral estrogen because it has a profoundly negative impact on the gut. It creates that leaky gut that so many people hear about, that intestinal permeability disorder that's such a central mechanism to everything, including tied into breast cancer. And you never want to take an oral testosterone because of the same reason. First pass metabolism through the liver creates so many toxic estrogen metabolites. It just irritates the heck out of the system. And this is one reason when a woman started on oral birth control pills, they say, oh, by the way, this is going to increase your risk of heart attack, stroke, and blood clots. Because creating so much inflammation within the vascular system, you get clots up in the brain, heart, or lungs. Getting back to the estrogen dominance, it makes the estrogen dominance worse. And then estrogen dominance keeps moving along, even if you're not having the bad flows, bad cramps, bad PMS anymore. And then here comes things like ovarian cysts and breast cysts and endometriosis, infertility, to the point where a woman may be told, oh, well, we got to take out this ovary because it's so full of cysts and it's giving you all this pain. Or your ovary's okay, but you got the fibroids or endometriosis, we got to take out your uterus. Any surgery to change the anatomy down there makes the estrogen dominance worse. So if you get a hysterectomy, you may not have endometriosis, fibroids, bad flows, bad cramps anymore, but your estrogen dominance is even worse now. And so these are the things that they do to treat that typically actually make this worse. And then you got a higher risk of autoimmune disease and a much higher risk of cancer, of course. Anxiety, panic attacks, and all this kind of stuff. Somebody may go, okay, I got anxiety and panic attacks. I can't get through my day. Okay, we're going to give you Xanax. Now, you might feel calmer and all this, which is great. But you think back and go, okay, so for all the reasons why this woman may be anxious and have panic attacks, probably a bunch of reasons, the one thing we know is not causing it is a Xanax deficiency, because we don't have Xanax in our system. Or the insomnia part. Well, let's give them Ambien. Okay, I can sleep better. But of all the things that could have been causing the insomnia, the one thing you know it's not is an Ambien deficiency. Because we don't have Ambien in our body. Something, it's not that. We really missed an opportunity that was provided to us to fix the estrogen dominance at that stage, rather than letting it keep getting worse and worse and worse for the autoimmune disease and the cancer. So let's figure out why. And then it goes back to things like the gut and the stress hormone cortisol. If estrogen levels are rising as time goes on, well, before menopause, a woman makes estrogen with her ovaries. So your ovaries make new healthy estrogens, estradiol and estrone, to keep away all those things we talked about. But once an estrogen has been in your system for a while, it gets beat up. And now it's irritating and toxic to the system. You got to run your detox pathways, got to dump toxins into the gut so we can poop them in the toilet. There's very few toxins in our body that can leave through peeing, sweating, and breathing. Mostly we've got to poop them out. But what happens is you probably gotten B vitamins deficient, or we're not eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables like the cauliflower and the kale and the sauerkraut to have something called DIM to run our detox pathways. But then even if we can get these toxic old estrogens into our gut, we have such messed up guts in our society. Stress, Motrins and Advils, birth control pills, meds to control blood sugar like metformin, acid blocking medicines, all these kind of things totally disrupt the gut, make it leaky. So that toxic things that are in our gut, our intestines, that should go into the toilet, they don't go in the toilet. They leak through the holes in our intestine, get into our bloodstream, go all the way around the body. But that compromises the barrier that separates the bloodstream from the brain, called the blood-brain barrier. And this is where we get a leaky brain. So these toxins get into the bloodstream and then even go to the brain. And so if you can't get rid of all toxic estrogens, they start to build in the system, start getting too much of the old toxic ones. And then when the body's under a lot of stress, the stress hormone cortisol gets kicked up into the stress mode and gets stuck in the stress mode. People may experience this stuck in the stress mode as physical stress, things like I hold my shoulders up, I find myself, I'm not breathing, I'm not taking deep breaths, I bite my fingernails, I grind my teeth, I pick at my cuticles. But if you're starting to get these things going on, your body is under a lot of physical stress. That cortisol got stuck in the stress mode. Well, cortisol is part of this beautiful hormone production cascade called the steroidogenic hormone production cascade. And when cortisol gets stuck, it starts making it hard to make these other really important hormones. All the ones we talked about before, estrogens, progesterone, testosterone, DHA, pregnenolone, all these kind of things. The very first hormone that starts to tank is progesterone. So now you got too much estrogen, you're losing your progesterone. And so we say, okay, we know where this estrogen dominance comes from. Let's create calm, so cortisol resets. Let's fix the gut. Oh, now you're detoxifying, and let's fix any vitamin deficiencies and these kind of things. Well, now you're getting rid of these old toxic estrogens. Now progesterone production starts coming up, or we can use progesterone as a medication. Every pharmacy carries it, bioidentical. Never want to use a fake one. We start progesterone in a capsule for women with this estrogen dominance because we've got to create calm, right? Progesterone is one of the very few hormones that creates calm in the body. Most hormones rev. Estrogen, testosterone, thyroid, they all rev. Progesterone calms. We give a woman progesterone prescription, covered by insurance, before bedtime. Oh my gosh, if we get the right dose, sleep like a baby, and you're so chill within days. Now we got progesterone up. We're going to get estrogen back down, including cortisol goes, that feels so good. The gut heals because the gut gets whacked by stress. Then the hormone symphony starts really balancing because all the hormonal things go away. Ovarian cysts reverse and go away. Endometriosis and fibroids reverse and go away. The PMS goes away. The bad flows, the bad cramps, it all is great. The entire body responds positively, including, you can imagine, the brain's not going to be functioning well when you're stuck in the stress mode, when you're revving without calming, when you're not sleeping. That poor brain is just getting totally whacked out. Well, now your brain function is so much better as well, and the anxiety and the depression and the panic attacks and the memory concentrations coming back. But now we did our due diligence to fix that estrogen dominance. Now we did our due diligence to prevent you from ever getting cancers and autoimmune disease long before it ever happens.
Well, I think I have a question that's on everybody's mind. How'd you know so much about a woman's body?
I love my mom and my grandma. The women in my family are fantastic. And so science just absolutely fascinates me. And women's health just absolutely fascinates me. It's a lot more complex, like I mentioned, than guys' health. Guys' health is like, okay, dude, are you making testosterone or not? And if you're not, you're driving your wife crazy and everybody around you and you don't feel good and all this. And women, it's like, oh no, it is so complicated, but so fascinating. But the other reason why they think women get 80% of all autoimmune disease is because of epigenetics. Because women have 2 copies of the X chromosome, every cell in their body. Men have one X, one Y chromosome. There are so many bad genes on the X chromosome. She has to be able to shut down almost an entire chromosome in every cell in her body to be optimally healthy. Wow, is that hard, right? And so this X chromosome epigenetics and this estrogen dominance are truly the 2 biggest reasons why women get all this stuff. We can optimize epigenetics, fix the estrogen dominance, and then we're in a position to turn all this stuff around. We can do it before age 19, then we're preventing it that entire life, but also then we start passing on cleaner genes to the next 6 to 8 generations.
Absolutely.
And breast cancer runs in my family big. My mom had breast cancer. My auntie, my mom's sister had breast cancer. She's still alive. She's wonderful, 92, sharp as a tack. And my maternal grandmother, breast cancer twice. So that's a special place in my heart because of my family history and all my mother and aunt and grandmothers that I love so much. I'd like to have this never happen to other women either.
Thank you for sharing that very sentimental story with me. So, Dr. Bilstrom, are you ready to give us your golden nuggets and add that ketchup just to recap?
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. It's important to know that the body's default mode is always to move towards wellness. Your body knows how to fix stuff. Your body's always trying to fix something. So if you've got a health issue, no matter how long you have it, no matter what it is, your body knows how to fix it. It is trying to fix it, but something has gotten in the way. And if you can figure out what that is, like the things we talk about today, you get those things out of the way and your body says, fantastic, I can fix this. Even things that have been around so long, you think there's no way your body's going to fix it, it can fix it. Hot dog, I got this. And it starts turning all this stuff around. The body is so fabulous at how it works. Super, super complicated, but super, super logical.
There you have it. The all-rounder, Dr. Bilstrom. That's the episode today. Has this conversation got you thinking? Better yet, are you up for the challenge? Think of it like endurance or high-intensity training. To whip your body into shape? Too much? Well, then just a few easy walks around the block. Set some milestones and keep increasing as your performance and results start to show. Let's put that brain to work. I appreciate Dr. Bilstrom for having this conversation about brain health for adults and children, the various examples, and introducing us to epigenetic optimization. I hope today's episode has found its way to you and inspired you to begin the journey to gut and hormone balance and having those candid conversations with your kiddos. Even if you have embraced exercising your brain and have successfully managed your anxiety, depression, hormones, and insomnia, goodness, that's a lot. I'd love to hear your practices, specifically in the role of epigenetics. I love it all, and so will someone else. Before I let you go, Dr. Bilstrom, why don't you go ahead and remind the people who you are, where they can find your resources, or reach out to you?
Well, thank you so much, Krystal, for having me here first. Everybody can reach me at drdavidbilstrom.com, and from there they can access all the blogs and the videos that we've done, all the social media, but also we have 2 different levels of educational courses for non-medical people, 2 different levels of educational materials for medical people, because we want somebody to eventually be in every community that knows how to do this. And anything we can do to help you, we'll do it. But we'd love to teach you on your own why this happens and how you can turn around yourself.
I'll make sure to include all of Dr. Bilstrom's resources and connections in the episode description, as well as on my website's resources page, movingwithmeaning.com. Make sure you guys subscribe to the show, Moving With Meaning, the podcast, and tap that alert bell so you know when these episodes drop. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Please share, like, repost, and follow. Tag someone. We are creating a community. Quick housekeeping before you go. Follow me on Instagram at movingwithmeaning82. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. I do dabble in TikTok at Krystal B. Clark. My YouTube channel is up. Kindly run over there and have a look or two. Links are in the episode. Alrighty. I'm Krystal on Moving With Meaning, the podcast, reminding you to take it one step at a time. All moves have meaning. Check y'all later.